best in the world, to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.
Hello, good evening from Sweden. Maybe good morning from some of you on the other side of the world, who knows. My name is Madeleine Laurin, and I'm here together with Stellan Norral to reflect around the topic fundamental assumptions. What do you say, Stellan?
Yeah, that's right. You and I, we had an idea half a year ago to start an inspirational pod on fundamental assumptions, how we can make business in the new paradigm. And you and I met and we had some ideas, and then we didn't reach all the way forward. So the idea is now to test the concept, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
And so we have set up some kind of story here on the table. Should we tell the audience what we have on the table here?
Well, we have your fantastic cards.
Yeah, the deck of cards. We have produced a deck of cards, yeah.
The thing is that when we went through this some 6 months ago, the world did look a little different than it does today.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Make these cards that we reasoned around last time actually have new meanings today,
yeah,
some of them.
Yeah, definitely. And what you and I talked about then was that how can we take the so-called, at that point, existing paradigm, maybe we should call it the old now.
That's the old one,
the old
definitely.
Now, yeah. So it went quick, much quicker than anyone could anticipate, I guess. And so what we're now going to do here, on the table we have a deck of cards which one of the sides has assumption, a fundamental assumption for, first of all, now the old paradigm, and on the other side of the each card there is another fundamental assumption that could take us further. That's
into the future.
Into the future, yeah, that's right. So, and when we did this work of ours half a year ago, you and I, we sorted out. This deck of cards had some 60 or 70 or 80, I don't remember exactly.
A lot of cards.
A lot of cards with all those assumptions on. And if you're interested to know more about how we have created and so on, please get in contact with any of us, so we can tell you a little bit about the story up behind it. But you're going to understand. That's our guess that you're going to understand what we're heading at here. So, we you and I, when we sat down, we also sorted out some cards that were in the same area of everything has to do with business, right? Yes. Right, in this program, in this, but the rest of the assumptions were all over the so-called life, or whatever we call it, the complex system called life. So, but here we have assumptions that are connected to business, right?
And we made some clusters around the different topics.
So the idea here now is that you and I are looking at the table, and you take a cluster of something. What does this cluster say?
See the possibilities, create the future and history today.
And in this, you have various assumptions. You can choose one of them, and then we can take one of those.
Should I read it and then put it?
Yeah, you can read. Maybe I have to do that. I don't really know. Let's see how this works. We can have various. So right now, you will watching the YouTube channel. You will see one of those cards, and it was in seeing possibilities. Yeah, that's right. So I can read it. It's about uncertainty is negative. It says uncertainty and change is negative and should be avoided.
Do we really believe in that?
Well, up until recently, I guess. And when we're in this moment, actually, I would say this is still an assumption that is very powerful in the society
definitely.
these days. So there is a lot of uncertainty, and we also see that there is change not only coming, that is already here, and we should have avoided it. So that's approximately the story right now, isn't it? So what do you say about it? What does it do to us?
Well, it's it takes away your comfort or your day-to-day stable life. You don't really you don't turn it over every day. But this one, when you start thinking of the uncertainty, it's a little difficult for us sometimes to think a little extra. We take many things for granted.
Yeah, we are actually told that uncertainty is negative and we should avoid it. And so,
but we strive very often. We strive for the certainty instead. So we are not used to handling the uncertainty.
No, that's right. And what I'm thinking of is what happens if we just we switch the card and see what could be an alternative assumption then. What about that? See what it says on the other side. So this is how we do it. On the other side it says uncertainty holds possibilities. And if I read the card, it says uncertainty is hotbed for development. The change curve can be seen as a possibility curve. What is your reflections on that?
Well, sometimes when you end up in a situation where you're not so sure of what's happening around you, it gives you, of course, an unstable platform, and it's difficult to see the possibilities. But if you once you've been there, it's easier. Every time you end up in such a situation, it's easier to see the positive things and the possibilities. That's why the word possibility is positive.
Yeah, fantastic. I've never thought of it.
You never thought of that?
No.
Yeah.
I've been working with possibilities for years. This is so fun.
And I gave you this just like that.
Yes.
You'll have it from me for free today. No, but I believe that it's crisis and uncertainty. It creates possibilities in a new way. So it forces us to think in a new way. And I think that's very good. And we really have, it's very accurate right now.
Yeah, that's right. So right now I'm thinking also here says the change curve, which is accelerating right now. It's like a steep change curve. And what will then happen if we see it as a possibility curve? In the times of greatest change lies the times of biggest possibilities then.
Well, just an example as of today with our corona crisis that we have, I believe that many people have learnt how to work on a distance with digital media. You don't always have to travel physically and see each other physically every time. I think many people have discovered the new possibility of meeting digitally.
Yeah, definitely.
And it works. It actually works very well.
So for you who are watching and listening now, this is basically the idea we have on how we should use those cards. So now we have tried the uncertainty and changed that from being something we should avoid and negative to something that holds possibilities. And now I realize that is not only possible, it's also positive. I really loved that one, Madeleine. Shall we take from another pile of another pile of cards?
Let's see here. We had a new we to contribute to worth. What do you say? Value. Contribute to value. Let's have that one.
Yeah, I agree. We have one here. This is so exciting. It's so exciting. Now let's see. Okay, so now we have it in picture here. We and them. We have most in common with people who look like us. Okay, we have most. Okay, so this. I can start on this one because I think it is actually destroying for us when we have to define a we depending on a them.
Yeah.
And when we do so, we're diminishing the we into something that has to have a them. So it's not only that we do it, it's also diminishing it ourselves by having to have an outer enemy or someone else, or you can blame those them. It could be the employees if you're the boss, and it could be it could be you even calling competitors or someone to blame when things happen that doesn't suit you. And I don't know how you look at it, Madeleine.
Well, someone taught me once that when you blame someone, you point at them, but at the same time, you point 3 times on yourself. So
yeah, 3 fingers on. Okay.
you see, you have 3 fingers here. You point somewhere, but it's actually
Pointing
you have to
back.
start. You have to start with yourself.
Okay, so let's see what happens if we turn the card, and we can make it a little bit live here. So if you turn the card the other way around, we have an including we. Okay. So I read here, we have more in common with other peoples than there are differences. Whoops. We have more in common than there are differences. And what if we then focus on differences? Of course, then there would be no... Then we miss the whole thing. The whole power of the system, more or less. So, okay, that's interesting. What are your reflections on such a assumption?
Well, maybe you should start listening a little more on others. We are very quick in assuming things before we start listening, and I think this is actually a good twist on the card. It gives you a possibility to listen a little bit more.
Yes, it
and
does.
You realize that we actually do have things in common.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, just to look around in the room and see other people, you realize that, whoops, they look like me. Maybe a little different haircut and
but they have a smile, they have eyes. It's always something.
Blood in their veins, very often at least.
We're not that different.
No, that's right. And the interesting thing about the including we, it's also including the previous assumption, we and them. It doesn't say that it was wrong, it's just a part of the bigger picture. So this is how those cards are actually created. So from this point of view or perception, it includes this one that we started out with, but from this angle, these seem to stand in opposition. That's the interesting thing. So from one side, it includes the other, but from this side, it seems that it's in opposition to this. That is interesting. Okay, so we put that away again. What that pile?
I think so.
Okay, so yeah, it was no, new we. That's right.
It was. We have to keep this order.
Yeah, you have to keep this. Shall we take another one here?
Work life,
Work
health.
life. Yeah, that's a part of business. Work life.
Let's see what we can find here.
This is also interesting. Goal-oriented. That's what it says. And that's well-being strategy. Which one do you think?
This one, maybe.
Focus on the individual. Okay.
I haven't that done.
Oh, okay.
I think this one is better.
Well-being is related. Okay, this is really good. Yeah, this is wow.
Is a good one.
Okay, so now we're showing picture for you, the rest of you. It says well-being is related to achievements. Well-being is connected to personal success, status, and achieved goals. Yeah, this is part of the whole story. Let's say, what do you think about it when you hear it?
Well, it's a little me, myself, and I. when I read it, or I listen to you reading it, it's a little the old paradigm.
Yeah, not so little, maybe.
Very old, maybe old.
Yeah, at least from the beginning of the last century. first part of that century.
Yeah, I think it's very old. Things have happened since then, but it's still...
It's still a predominant way of thinking, and something that is really a fundamental assumption for the systems that we are. I mean, the CVs, they tell this story, and it's always something else you should do to reach this achievement, and then you can be feeling well and be comfortable or having success or happiness. Yeah, it's always in front of you. You can never embrace it. So, shall we turn the card around?
Yeah. Let's see what it says.
It says well-being is related to relations and engagement. Okay. Well-being is connected to meaningfulness and the quality of our relations. Okay. What do we say about that assumption then?
But again, I think it's a lot about listening to each other.
Yes.
Also, and to sense what others believe in, or what they can see, what possibilities, or whatever the issue is in this certain matter. I believe it's important that we listen more. It comes to, I think that's something that comes up more or less in not every card, but you can always relate to listening more.
Yeah, and listening is one thing, and I also believe that meaningfulness is something that has been a great lack of in the society as we used to know it. Again, there's so much that can happen in 3-4 weeks. It's very exciting times we live in, and what was impossible half a year ago. I mean, when Greta visited US, and she said you have to stop flying.
Oh,
and
no,
that's it.
no, we can't.
No, you can't, and it took 2 days, and then we stopped flying. So, yeah, well-being is related to relations. Of course, relations, and this is maybe something we can elaborate on a little, because one thing I've heard is a saying that you should be, what do you call it, social distancing, which is an odd thing to say. I would say physical distancing would be more appropriate. If this is an assumption that we can use, which I believe is very important, then this, as we said, new ways of meeting, new ways of relate to each other. I heard a story this morning. I had in another concept here called Radio Intentional Decisions. I had a very interesting person here, Tintin Santen. She's working as head of innovation or something like that at the Swedish University of Agriculture here in close by. And she said that the meetings she had the last weeks were so focused, extremely focused, and everyone was so present and alive. And this is actually...
That's listening again.
yes, yeah. Interesting, this one. I probably have to learn a lot of things concerning such an assumption.
But I believe we have lots of examples that have grown now these last 2 weeks only, for how to keep in contact with people is not only work-related, but also privately. Now all our elderlies are locked up on their elderly homes, and they have friends and family, and how do they keep in contact? And now I've seen examples that they have coffee breaks through Skype with each other, and somebody had dinner parties with Skype, so everybody was connected. So there's it's people are trying to explore how to meet, and I believe that this is actually going to be really good for our work meetings also, and we get used to having these meetings. Yeah,
both work life and private life, and maybe we should. I heard a lot of stories as I have been working with leadership and communication and stuff like that you should separate your work from your private life, and I would say, why?
Yes and no, exactly.
Of course, it's important to have like some kind of structure for it. But that doesn't say it has to be either or. It could be both and.
Yeah.
But
we are very good at dividing things in either or.
Yes.
Or black or white. Either or. instead of including it
Mm,
and
mm.
seeing possibilities again.
Possibilities, the positive abilities then. Interesting, yeah. I'm so...
We can sit here for
Yeah, we
hours.
can. This one we should put back in the right pile.
Yes, you're so right. Here.
So we have a table full of cards.
Yeah, something over there.
Yeah,
What's in
oh,
there?
definitely. It says, from best in the world to best for the world, to win together. Okay, okay.
You have any interesting cards there?
Yeah, I have. We can take this one. This is probably basis for a lot of the other ones. I put it up and I read something that I was taught in school. Competition.
Or yes.
Yes. Okay.
Either or.
Either or. Yeah. Either or. Okay. So first of all, before we say something about competition, I would just add that this deck of cards is not like telling us that it was totally wrong. It was just not. It didn't see the bigger picture. So the suggestion with those cards is not to throw competition out of the window, but more not having as the main rule. Maybe it's a rule that can be applied in some context during some
In a little humble way.
yeah,
maybe.
but maybe not as the first rule. So okay, so I read it now. Competition is the basis for efficient development of businesses and societies. So, what do you say as a businesswoman?
Well, actually, you could, if you do this together with your competitors, you could even go further. You can develop quicker and further.
And I'm thinking of, for instance, if we say, I have an interesting thing here is that last year there was an article in the newspaper. It said that they have found a new language. It still happens. It's called Yerek, and it's spoken of 250 persons in a region somewhere in Indonesia, I think it was. And first of all, you think, okay, haven't they found those people up until now? But the anthropologists had found them, but this was the linguists that had studied the language, and they realized, oh, this is a totally new language. And in Yerek, there was some interesting stuff. First, they didn't have any concerning relations, so they didn't have any violence between people, and they didn't have words for it. So they didn't have words for it, and that's interesting in itself, of course. But it was also another thing for the people who talked Jedek, was that they encouraged their children not to compete. So, in some sense, I guess this is for us it's maybe a totally different worldview, but very interesting. And related to competition, then I would say competition says for every winner there has to be at least one loser. And I was taught in school that I was supposed to win, because
Otherwise you lose.
yes, and it was really like that. We had the grades we were given. They were from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 was the best. But there was not there were no you couldn't not everyone in class couldn't have a 5.
No.
There were like a certain amount of 5s that were supposed to be given.
Quota.
Yeah, it's a quota of 5. So when the 5s were out of order and out of stock, then you should be glad if you had a 4, and when they went out of stock, then and so on. So it's a little bit odd. Then they changed the system a little bit for the grades, so it wasn't related to that. It was more related to a goal. But nevertheless, competition for me as a I don't know if I told you, but I studied maths a lot before okay, so. And this is a very strange equation. It says 1 + 1 is at best 1. That's what it says. Competition. 1 + 1 at its best, it's 1. Because the other one has to lose. It goes to 0. So, yeah.
I never thought of it like that.
No.
Philosophic.
Yeah, a mathematician, you know.
Philosophic
1 plus
mathematician.
1 equals not much more than not
No, but
even
competition, yes, it drives people forward and business forward. But I believe also it's at the same time you don't have to decide it has to be either competition or not, but a little of everything. I mean, we have this wonderful word in Sweden which is lagom, which is a well balance. You could say if you translate it.
Shall we turn the card around, or would you do that for us, Madeleine?
I'm curious.
You're curious. What does it say? Whoops. Together, it says, businesses and societies are best developed together in ecosystems. I would say this is an assumption that is very of great importance that we choose. This also says, for me at least, that it doesn't rule out totally competition, but it doesn't say it's the main rule any longer. So the main rule should be together, and in certain occasions it's well, then you should compete, of course.
Yeah, but it's a little.
But not as a main rule. Thanks. That was that one.
A little lagom.
Yeah. I like this game of cards.
Game of Thrones. No.
Don't they compete?
What do we have
Game
here?
of Together. Why don't they do that kind of shows?
What do you say about this?
Yes, I love
the
this.
dialogue and communicating.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
say.
About having right, maybe. I don't know. Debate. Okay. Debate. Polemics and debate drives development in society. Polemics and debate drives development in society. What
Does it? Is my first reflection.
I would say, yeah, does it. That's a good reflection as a first, and then the second reflection would then be,
is that good?
anyone fed up with debate? Hands up. Yeah.
No, 2 hands up.
Yeah, 2 hands up. Yeah. Okay, so of course, in this is dry. This is important for not only businesses. This is important for most part of society, I would say. But it's
Definitely.
again connected to maybe the competition. In a debate, do you know what the word is all about? It's a French word from. Do you speak French? I don't do.
I used to.
Debattle.
Yeah, it's a battle.
It's a battle,
Yeah, it's
and
a
you
battle.
have to win. So now
There you're back to the winners.
you take your arguments and you throw them in the head of the opponent.
I didn't know it came from that.
So even discussion is quite interesting when we're talking of debate, and discussion is it's actually dissecate. Is when you dissecate, taking apart. So if debate is to knock the
battle.
arguments in the battle and to knock the arguments in head of the other opponent, this is the taking apart the arguments. So you.
But I like the word dialogue better.
Yes, we go for the other side. Yeah, we do that. Just shift side here.
It is. Oh, it is.
Yes, bingo. Yeah, dialogue. Dialogue and conversation creates development in society. Dialogue and conversation creates development in society. Any hands up for that one? I like that one. Okay, so what do you think about it?
No, but dialogue is also back to listening. That you both. It's a give and take, and creating understanding for. And when you have a dialogue, you learn new things. So you develop in a positive way.
Yeah, it's a lot about learning here, definitely. I'm also thinking of there's a common misunderstanding concerning dialogue. Very often when I meet with people and I talk about dialogue, do you know what they said? Dia is for two.
Yeah, and log is.
But that's not right. That's duologue.
Yeah.
Dialogue. The meaning of dialogue is actually it's about understanding the other person or the other person's argument. So, in going from battling to understanding.
Yeah, because if you and I had a dialogue, you have your truth based on your life and experience and knowledge. I have my truth based on my experience. But when we start having a dialogue, a third truth shows up.
arises. Yeah, that's
And
right.
that's why it's so good with having this dialogue, because if we have just this debate and
We would
we
never
battle,
listen.
it's
We would listen
either
again.
mine or yours.
Yeah.
Who is wrong and who is right.
Mm.
So this is, and maybe it develops more than a third. It develops 10 new truths.
Yeah, that's right. Super interesting, this debate, from debate to dialogue, and of course again, sometimes you need to go for a real battle. I wouldn't say it's never will happen, but it couldn't be the main rule again. An interesting thing was, I don't know if you saw it or heard about it. It was the last election here in Sweden. It was the last night before the election, and they were going to have the main or the ending. Do you know what they called it? It wasn't end debate. It was when you shoot at each other. It was the what do you call it?
Duel.
Yeah, duel.
Wasn't it?
Yes. So at that point, they had come so far. So just throwing the arguments in the heads of each other wasn't enough. They should shoot the other the opponent down. So yeah, it's easy to laugh at when you have like some kind of a meta perspective as we have now. But I guess those that were engaged in that duel, they did it because they thought it was right.
I wonder what would happen if we could have a dialogue even there.
Yeah, and build upon something. I had the opportunity. It was just before the election. It was actually a couple of months before the election here in Sweden. There was a man calling me. Leif is his name. Leif told me he was living in one of those elderly, what do you call it? Care houses. Yeah, that's right. And he was in his 80s, so he's 84. And he told me that he and his friends, all in their 80s, they met every second week for something they called in Swedish snillen spekulera. I don't know if there is any good way to interpret that but they had dialogues and so on about different stuff, and sometimes it could be how does banking how do you go to bank today with this digital era, and another time it could be whatever it was, and at some point they wanted to know, what about the future? What to say in 20 years? What is the society we want to create in 20 years? And those were in the 80s. I was so thrilled. And then they said, this was in the local municipality that I live in, local society. It's in southern parts of Sweden. And so they realized that this is something for our politicians. They must know this, and they must have ideas and visions. So they this is so funny, because they were so right. And then when he contacted me, he said, so we sent out 20 questions to them, or 10 or whatever, 10 questions it was. And when I read those questions, it could be relevant not only for those in their 80s, it could be relevant for me or for those in their youth. So it was very, I would say, the
good
hair,
questions.
yeah, it was really good question, because the hairs on my arms, they raised, and I felt like, wow, what do they say? And then they asked me, and when we realized, we invited all those politicians, and they said yes. So now we realize that we have to have someone that can moderate this dialogue. And they use this word dialogue, and I was, wow, what are those people? So I met with the group, and I realized that they share this almost the same worldview as I would say I have, and so we decided upon to do this together. And they said to me, Stellan, when you know how now when you are having those politicians in this open meeting, tell them that they can't say against each other. They have to build upon what the other one says.
Ooh, that's a challenge.
That's a challenge. So if you have an idea, for instance, Madeleine for party, Madeleine, I don't know, says, I want more security for elderly, then you couldn't, as party, Stellan's party, say, no, we don't want that. We say, okay, that's interesting. We have a solution. Could that be of interest to you? And how can we build upon that? So
And you have a dialogue.
have a dialogue.
Look
Yeah,
at this.
that was interesting. Okay, sorry for this, but it was such a
That's
fascinating.
nice for these elderlies.
And the meeting went well. We filled up the whole.
They did.
whole
And what happened with all the questions then afterwards?
Yeah.
From the politicians' point of view.
Yeah, I would say they were quite unused to
Yeah.
have this kind of there were rules. So we set up rules for the leading politicians of this little municipality, and so when they entered this, they thought it would be like just another debate, but it wasn't. So yeah.
So you actually changed their fundamental assumptions.
Yeah, well, we hope so. Leif, me, and the other in his group there. So.
Fun. Oh, that was a really.
Yeah, it was really funny. It was
fun
a
little
fantastic story, actually. Let's see if we can find something else.
Do we have something else? How much time do we have here?
Yeah, I think we have another 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, we could probably
check.
find something here.
In the meantime, you search for a new assumption. I check in the program tableau.
Maybe this one.
Maybe I don't have that much. We have 4 minutes more.
Yeah, this is a short one, but it's a big question. It's a big issue.
It's a big question.
But it's a short card.
It's short. Okay, it doesn't say almost anything, but it says everything.
It says actually quite a lot.
Okay, it's about the individual. We are individuals in a collective.
Are we?
Are we?
And what is an individual?
Oh, what is an individual? It says taking apart again. It's the taking out of its context, more or less. So yeah.
But it's yeah.
Shall we turn the
We
card
turn
up-
it,
we
yeah,
turn
because we don't have so
card?
much time. But
No,
it's still.
personal. We are persons in organizations. Wow.
And that's a big difference of being an individual
Yeah,
and
you're
being a
left
person.
alone. Yeah, as an individual, you're left alone. You're supposed to take all the decisions and have all the responsibility, the individual responsibility.
Yeah, it's also when you're an individual, it's more like one of these chess figures.
Yes.
Instead of a person, you have a name. It's Stellan, it's Madeline, it's Michael, whoever. It's a big difference if you're an individual or if you're actually a person.
Wow, yeah. And
So I think it's a short question, but it was a very big issue.
It's a very big issue, and I would say also the individual perspective separates us from the whole, while the person and the personal doesn't separate us at all. It's actually saying that we have a viewpoint maybe, or again some kind of an argument, or we were also calling it. You said something about that. It's your opinions or your whatever it is, and we can change opinions or trade them maybe.
But summarizing it all here, if we should try to summarize, it's because we are in a very special era right now. It's a new era, new paradigm that has actually happened so extremely quick. And it's some people, they land on their feet quite quickly. Others don't, because they're not used to, they can't handling these quick changes. But if you're used to changes, it's easier to catch up all these new problems or possibilities. Not problems, it's possibilities, as I see them.
Yeah, and
maybe we can pick them up. It's a
I like that, and I also like that. The whole those deck of cards that we have been working with tonight, you and I here in this room, they are, for many people, they are truths. So calling them assumptions is a little bit nicer, but those are chosen truths.
Their truth.
Yeah, then there's chosen truths, and a lot of them are. I mean, as a person, I can see that. We can do another one, of course, but if I say it in one organization or in society, it's like swearing in church, and you know where the outdoor is. You have to go that direction. But if it was half a year ago of interest, it is crucial now.
Definitely. The good thing with these cards or any other tools of similar art is that they start a discussion around them. They
A
open the
dialogue.
view, a dialogue. Exactly. We have dialogue, positive possibilities.
Those words
Yeah.
are, we are like, we're stuck with them.
Yeah.
So let's once and for all leave those assumptions behind that doesn't serve us as persons, organizations, societies, and as a world as a whole.
We try to be open for changes.
Shall we say thank you to all of you who were following
you.
this fantastic? Yeah, I liked it. Now we're tested. If you also liked it, please comment, because we maybe can set up this inspirational podcast.
Yeah,
then
definitely.
It should be something done about it. And if you want to help us and you found others, we can also put up a link in the YouTube for a PDF. You can download them all if you want to study them more. We also produce this deck of cards, and if you want a copy of it, just contact us afterwards, emprogage.com. And we're supposed now to end this. So anything else you want to say in the end of this show, Madeleine?
No, I appreciate you bringing these topics up and out in the air. They are crucial for a better world. They're actually contributing for this development of
I believe so, yeah. And I'm also glad that you said yes when I called you the other day. It's not, I mean, 14 days ago we didn't have we got this idea about doing this the whole project, and I don't know, 5-6 days ago I called you and you said yes, of course, this is something we should do. So I'm glad that you responded in that direction.
Well, I try to see it as a possibility.
Yes, that's a possibility.
This is new for me, but I'm definitely going to try it more. I like this. I think this is creating a dialogue around the world. It's fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and take care, and be careful in those times with both your day-to-day life, but also the assumptions you do for life and for business. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We are creating the world we're now living in. We are competing in. We are repeating in. We are believing in. It's time for us to shift our mind from best in the world to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.